Hey guys, welcome back. Tisha here, back for another chapter reading of Stolen Innocence, my story of growing up in a polygamous sect, becoming a teenage bride, and breaking free of Warren Jeffs. It's by Elisa Wall with Lisa Pulitzer. Let's go ahead and jump into the next chapter, which is chapter 11. Go ahead and do me a favor and hit the like button and feel free to comment down below. The chapter is called The World of the Prophet. Your heart is in the wrong place. Warren Jeffs. Later that morning, after I set up the appointment, Mom and Cassandra, under priesthood pressure to convince me that the marriage was the right thing, tried to excite my interest by taking me to prepare for the fun part of the wedding. Together, we traveled to St. George to the fabric store where we browsed through various materials and patterns to assemble for the look of my wedding day. I just like that would be the fun part for somebody who actually wants this. She is a teenage girl who is being forced to marry, even though she doesn't want it. And to make it worse, it's her cousin. And to make it even, more horrible for her, it's her cousin that she can't stand. It's her cousin that has already given her the heebie-jeebies since she was younger. And her body just knew that something was wrong with him. And she's being forced to be with him. Let's continue. What I didn't know at the time was that even my sisters had gone to Uncle Warren with their concerns about my marriage and had been directed to encourage me to go along with it. When our visit to the fabric store failed to elicit any enthusiasm in me, we walked around the strip mall where we spotted a pair of gorgeous white crushed satin shoes in one of the windows. They were so pretty, with a delicate buckle across the ankle and a little heel. Cassandra said they'd be perfect with any wedding dress, but even the glamorous shoes couldn't lure me into the store. I don't need those shoes, I angrily declared. It should have been an exhilarating time for me, planning my wedding, picking out materials for my dress, and getting those special shoes, but it felt like I was being asked to design an outfit for my funeral. I was bordering on rude by the time my mother and sister dragged me from the shoe store where Cassandra had purchased the shoes over my objections to the Chili's restaurant. Eating out with Mom and Cassandra was bittersweet. With this terrible event looming over my head, it was hard to relax during what would turn out to be my last few moments as a carefree teenager. I was hurt that I was being pushed in this way and that no one could do something about it was listening to me. Most of my sisters had married young, but with the exception of Teresa, they had been allowed to reach the age of 18. I didn't know if any of them could understand what I was going through. They tried to console and encourage me, but it didn't make me feel any less afraid. Aware that I would be meeting with Uncle Rulon the following morning, I went through my closet to pick out my best dress when we returned home. A meeting with the prophet, especially on a subject like this, was very important. It's kind of like there was no point in her even going to this meeting because she was already going to be forced into this or guilted into this. So this is just a formality. And at that time, she doesn't even realize it. I wanted to look both pretty and respectful, the image of a perfect priesthood daughter. The next morning, I would have put little bows in my hair. I mean, they don't do all that, but I would have really made myself look infantile when I went up in there. The next morning, I settled into Mom's old mustard-colored Oldsmobile and restlessly smoothed my dress. Uncle Ruin's compound was too far to walk to, and I felt comforted by my mother's company during the short ride. She seemed a little withdrawn over the past several days, and while I believe that my situation had a lot to do with it, she had spoken little about what she was experiencing. She tried to assure me that everything was going to be fine, but I knew that inside she was fearful. I appreciated that she was willing to stand by me. As I sat in the waiting room, I rehearsed what I would say to Uncle Rulon. In the past, when I had been a guest of Cassandra or Rachel's, I had been invited to dine with Uncle Rulon and his family. It was a great honor after the meal when I was welcome to approach the prophet and shake his hand. But this meeting would be different. This time, it was about me. The waiting area was busy with people coming and going. After some time, Uncle Warren finally came out and greeted me. Wearing a wide grin and his predictable dark suit and tie, he addressed me with a warm, welcoming voice. "Elisa, how are you?" He motioned for me to follow him into the office. Exhausted, I quickly sat down in the dark upholstered chair closest to the door. I've been up most of the night praying, and I felt lightheaded from my ongoing fast. Warren sat down at his father's desk, which faced the wall, and swung his chair around to face me. She's talking about how she was lightheaded from a fast, which means this bothered her so immensely that she was spending extra time with God just for this thing not to go in her favor. Now, I always struggle with stuff like this when it comes to, God and what is allowed. But let's put that to the side and let's just think about this child basically starving herself and praying and pleading in hopes that she didn't have to go through with this. It's sad. Where am I at? Okay. Now, there was no desk separating us as there had been at Alta Academy. "Tell me what's going on," he began in a low, inquiring voice. "What is the issue?" I hesitated, wondering when Uncle Rulon would be coming in to join us. When he didn't immediately arrive, I felt obligated to go over my concerns a second time with Uncle Warren. He's acting like he doesn't get it. That's so irritating. You have her repeating this knowing that your father can't really do but so much because you're really the one who's controlling everything in the name of your father. But this is just gross. "Well, I know you told me to get married, and I know you feel like this is a revelation. I don't think that this is right for me because I feel like I need to have some time to grow up. I'm just not prepared for this kind of responsibility, and I am not willing to marry my cousin." That should have been enough. And this is one of the reasons why when we hear later on, like we did in Rebecca's book about the court sentencing, I got so upset because doing less than a decade is not enough for me. These women did not have a choice. And I don't think that the state understood the assignment when I feel like all of them should have got life sentences. I'm sorry, it may be a lot for some people, but I feel like they should have, because you took lives. You did. You broke up families. You enslaved people. Uncle Warren looked surprised. "Your cousin?" "Yes," I said. "You asked that I be married to Alan Steed, who is my first cousin." "Well," he began, wearing a look of confusion that worried me. "Have you been praying about it?" "Yes, I am. And everything is telling me not to do this." See, that's the other thing. If God only speaks to men, according to them, then why is she even praying about it? Let me keep going. "Every part of my soul and heart is telling me that this isn't right for me." "Have you told your father?" "Yes. I've met with Uncle Fred several times, and I've told him that this is something that I'm not willing to do at this point, that I would prefer not to get married, and he has instructed me to come to you. I need to let you know my concerns." Uncle Warren sat contemplatively for a brief moment. "Well," he announced, rising to his feet, "the prophet has directed you to do this." "I know, but I need to hear it from him," I replied, my stoic facade suddenly crumbling as I broke into tears. "I need to know that he is aware of the situation and at least ask him if he can give me 2 years. I just want 2 years before I get married." "Elisa," he replied, offering me a tissue from the box on his desk, "this is a revelation from God. This is an honor. To have the prophet place you in a good priesthood marriage. Are you declining to do this?" "No," I said, erasing tears from my cheek. "I just want you to know where I stand, where I am, and why I feel the way I do." As I sat nervously, shredding my tissue, I noticed a rainbow of flowers standing at the cheery attention in the garden just outside of the expansive bay window. My tissue was in tatters, with small pieces falling onto the floor as I made my position clear. If I'm going to go through with this marriage, then I need to hear it from the prophet's mouth, I petitioned, perhaps realizing that I was not going to back down until I saw Uncle Rulon. Warren went to speak with his father on my behalf. I watched as he exited through a second door in the office that opened up to a private hallway in Uncle Rulon's personal living quarters. A few minutes later, Warren reappeared in the doorway. "The prophet has a few minutes to see you," he told me. Rising to follow him down the long corridor, I grew terrified of what Uncle Rulon was going to tell me. I was going to meet the most important man in my church, the living embodiment of God on earth, and I was going to tell him that I thought he was wrong about his vision for my future. Pushing through a pair of lovely French doors that led to the dining room, I gathered my courage. I'd been speaking with the Lord for days. For days, you guys, for days. And surely he knew how I was feeling. Now it was up to Uncle Rulon to deliver his verdict on my situation. In the dining room, there were 2 long, shiny wood tables, draped in colorful tablecloths, and Uncle Rulon was seated at the head of one of them, his plate still filled with food. He wore a gentle smile as he motioned for me to come closer. I could feel his whole body shaking from his age as he took my hands in his. Oh, I didn't know he was talking at this point. I didn't know he was, okay. I still think that Warren has something to do with all of this. "What can I do for you?" he asked. I was overcome with emotion as I knelt by his side. I tried to remain calm, but my throat grew tight and tears began to fall. Uncle Rulon had experienced a second stroke and was now hard of hearing, but he seemed to listen intently as I started to tell him my feelings. In my mind, I thank God for granting me this moment. All this time, I had been fasting and praying to Heavenly Father for help, but I believed that he'd allow me to be before the prophet that day. In a hesitant voice, I explained to Uncle Rulon that I was not trying to defy him or God's directions for me, but I felt like I was too young to be married. "All I'm asking is to have 2 more years to grow up a bit," I begged. "If nothing else, could you please find someone other than my cousin Alan for me to marry? Alan is the last person I can ever imagine being a wife to. So please, just if there's any possible way, can this just not happen right now?" A confused look crossed his face as I stared into the prophet's eyes. "Now, what did you say, sweetie? Will you repeat that, please?" he asked solicitously. Am I saying that right? Solicitously. I took a deep breath and desperately tried to slow my heart down so I could compose myself as I repeated my worries and concerns. Just then, you know what? He didn't know about any of this. He's asking her to repeat herself. Wouldn't he know why she's there? He didn't know about any of this. Like I said, this is Warren's doing. Just then, Uncle Warren leaned down from his towering 6-foot-plus height and jumped in on the conversation. "This young lady feels like the place you have found for her to be married is not right, and she knows better," he began. You see what I'm saying? She never said that she knows better. She said that she doesn't feel it's right. She said that everything in her is telling her this isn't right. She's asking for more time. And you flip it to saying that she knows better. He should have got executed. Off with his head. No. Okay, I'm wrong for saying that. I'm just saying, like, I didn't like the way Warren was distorting my words, making it sound as though I was ungrateful, exactly, and thought I knew better than the prophet. It was disquieting and made me seem, am I saying that word? Alexa, how do you pronounce Disquieting? Of course she don't know. Y'all, I hope I said that right. And it made me seem more defiant than I was, but I was too frightened to speak up. Of course, She feels like you haven't decided right, and she wants your permission not to be married. Warren continued as I looked up at him in frustration. He was trying to make me feel terrible for even making such a request, for questioning the word of the prophet and God. Puzzlement swept over Uncle Rulin's face as he looked up to Warren and back down at me. For a moment, he said nothing, and then he smiled kindly. You follow your heart, sweetie. Just follow your heart, he told me, gently patting my head. This is why Warren didn't want people to meet his father and see his father. Because this has always been about Warren. This was not about Uncle Rulin. Not to say Uncle Rulin wasn't a jerk and a perv and all those other things, because he was. But it is to say that at some point he clearly began to take over under the guise of his father making these requests. That's the first thing. Second thing, he's telling her it's up to her. That's what he's saying. But Warren's not going to let that go down. That man, after 2 strokes, his mind was fixed and he realized, well, I don't know if he realized it, but the way that he once thought was changed in that regard. If this is what she's saying, he said, and I believe it. While he did not give me a direct answer, his words were clear and revealing. My heart, it's not revealing, relieving. My heart leapt into my throat. Finally, someone was listening to me and gonna give me a chance to decide. Rising to my feet, I felt as if 1,000 pounds had been lifted off my chest. The prophet had told me to follow my heart. The will of God was for me to listen to my own judgment. God bless you and keep sweet, Rulin said, smiling, and he turned back to his lunch. Uncle Warren ushered me out of the dining room and back down the hall. I expressed my relief aloud. The prophet told me to follow my heart, and my heart is telling me not to do this. Suddenly, Warren's pace slowed. Elisa, he said, turning his gaze in my direction, your heart is in the wrong place. This is what the prophet has revealed and directed you to do, and this is your mission and duty. Confusion rocked me. I had just walked out of a meeting with the prophet where he himself had told me to follow my heart, and my heart was telling me that this was not right. Now Warren, who in my mind was only second in command, was telling me that my heart was in the wrong place. Yeah, that makes absolutely no sense. If he says follow your heart, then that's what you do. But Warren being Warren, going to tell her that it's not in the right place. That way she doesn't follow her heart. But the so-called prophet said to follow it. So you sound foolish, but this is how this thing works. Well, he told me to follow my heart, I reminded him. And my heart is screaming, no. Uncle Warren looked astonished. It was like he hadn't heard a word I said. Despite Uncle Rulin's declaration, Warren remained unmoved. The prophet's statement was irrelevant. All that mattered was what Warren wanted. It was dinner time when I arrived back at Uncle Fred's house that Saturday evening. Everyone was assembled around the tables. I've been crying for 4 days straight. I hadn't eaten and I barely slept. My life had become so full of drama, and it felt like people were constantly stopping in the middle of meals to focus on me whenever I entered the house. Racing upstairs to my room, I assumed what had become my new position, face down on the bed in a puddle of tears. Mom followed me upstairs and sit up next to me on the bed. Are you okay? Are you gonna be okay, honey? She asked, gently stroking my hand. No, Mom. I would rather die right now than ever have to go through with this. Lisi, maybe being that it's the Lord's will, this will work out. Alan can't be that bad. It's not the Lord's will, though. The sad thing is we know that her mom is still in his crap. It's not the Lord's will. I'm so tired of people putting stuff on God. It's not God. Anyways, if you believe in that thing. There is no way I could ever marry Alan and have it work out, I told her forcefully. So what are you going to do? I would rather die than go through with this wedding. I could see that my words upset my mother, but at that moment, I didn't care. All I cared about was saving myself from this horrible fate. I'd have been home for less than 30 minutes when there was a knock on the bedroom door. One of Uncle Fred's wives was there to deliver the message that Uncle Fred wanted to see me. I knew what he was going to say, and I dragged my feet all the way to his office. It's just man after man after man telling this girl what she has to do. That's all it is. They beat you down to the point where you do it. Another mother was on the couch in his office when I arrived. Can I just do this alone? I thought to myself as I assumed my seat. Well, how did it go? Uncle Fred said, looking out at me from behind his heavy wood desk. Well, I was able to see Uncle Rulon, and he told me to follow my heart. Uncle Fred grinned. So can I tell Warren that there's been a definite yes? That's not her heart. No, I shot back in alarm. I don't know. I won't. I can't. My heart. Everything in me is just screaming no. Are you defying the prophet's words? No, I'm not trying to defy the prophet. I am just trying to do what is best for me. Well, I just want you to know that if you turn down the prophet's offer, it is very likely you will never get married. See, that's not a big deal to some, but in their belief system, marriage is everything. If she's not married, then she can't get to the celestial kingdom. So it's a big deal. It's yet another way to make her go towards this. I cannot, I interrupted. And I could not have you welcome in this house anymore, Uncle Fred said. So get married or get out. I would have got out. Tears began to pour from my eyes. In all the times I had met with Fred since this mess started, I had always tried to maintain my composure. But now, exhausted, hungry, and defeated, I broke down in front of this. Seeing this opening, he took the chance to exploit it. I felt the world closing in on me. I hated Uncle Fred and Uncle Warren and even my mother for putting me in this position. Exactly. Because even though her mother was born into this, even though I often try to find myself being like, okay, she didn't know any better, yada, 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 I would like to think that something in me would be an alarm if I were in this situation and that I would want to protect my kids at all costs. But I don't know. I was 14 years old with no money and nowhere to go. When my brothers and sisters had tested the boundaries of rebellion, they had been shipped off to reform. While that was hard for them, at least it wasn't permanent. Marriage to Alan wasn't just permanent, it was infinite. A punishment that would continue through this life and into the next. If I did marry him, I'd be left with no other options. For a 14-year-old girl with no family and no place to live, it might as well be a death sentence. I had always been an optimistic person, but as I stared the possibility of this bleak future in the face, I realized that even I wasn't willing to push the limits of hope that far. I couldn't go to the local police. I feared they would just bring me back to Fred and report me to Warren. I contemplated going outside the community, but my fear of that evil world was overpowering, which is why they do it. That's why they make these people think that the so-called Gentiles are so evil, because if they go to that lengths, if they decide that that's something that they want to do, their fear is going to prevent a lot of them from doing so. It's just a mind game over and over and over again. And that's why a lot of them are bound. I thought back to all my mother's stories about law enforcement, officials chasing her in the middle of the night, trying to throw her father in jail, who knew what the evil forces on the outside might do to me if I came to them with this story. Do you have a wedding dress made? Uncle Fred asked, breaking the discomforting sound of my quiet sobs. No, I announced, rising to my feet. Even if I was getting married, I would never wear a wedding dress. And I'm not going to get married, so I don't need a wedding dress. When I returned to my mother's room, I found a draft of a letter that my mother had composed. So now her mom's going to manipulate her too. At least that's what I'm thinking. Y'all put down in the comment section. What do you think her mom's going to put down in this letter? I think that it's going to be yet another form of manipulation. Let's go. In it, she begged her new husband, my new father, to be sensitive to my situation and realized that this was hard for me. She asked for a delay of 2 years and made it clear that if I married now, it would just create problems in the future. Oh, I'm surprised by this. I didn't remember this part from the other book. I'm surprised that she did all this. I knew that her mother had objections, but I didn't know that her mother had written this thing down. Okay, let's go. She even raised issues about Alan, explaining that he seemed to be a very immature person who didn't appear ready for a wife, and reiterated that Alan and I were first cousins. The letter surprised me. Girl, it just surprised me too. It really did. I've been pleading with her to do something to prevent the marriage, and all along she'd seemed so sure that the situation would somehow work itself out on its own. Now finally, she was trying to lobby on my behalf, but as a woman. Mom had no sway with Uncle Fred or the prophet. Still, it made me love my mother even more to know that she was listening to me when it seemed no one else would. As a woman, she has no sway. As a woman. Because that's the thing about this. Women don't matter to them until it's convenient. I collapsed into bed that night but couldn't fall asleep. I searched for reasons why Warren would contradict the words of the prophet. He'd been pushing the marriage as though the prophet had decided it for me, but I had heard the opposite from Uncle Rulin's mouth. I didn't know if this was truly the will of God. On one hand, it felt like I was being given to Alan for all the work he'd done for Uncle Fred, but on the other, it felt like there was a much larger reason. I just didn't know what it was. Uncle Fred could have asked the prophet to reward Alan with any of his daughters, but he'd chosen me, the young girl from the problem family, the girl whose brothers had all abandoned the priesthood. It was no secret that I had been close to my brothers, especially after the move to Uncle Fred's. Perhaps Uncle Fred and Warren felt the risk that I'd follow in their footsteps was too great. Whereas the church was perfectly willing to let boys go, I can now see that the prospect of losing a girl was too much for them. If I left, I might bring other girls along or get them to start questioning things. I know now that I was confident and I wasn't afraid to ask my questions. In short, I was a problem. And if they didn't solve it, they'd end up paying for it later. The next day proved even more difficult. By the time I arrived at church that Sunday, deep melancholy had taken over my mind. Bouncing between prayer, sadness, hope, and fear over the past days had finally taken its toll on me. Choosing a seat in one of the rows, I tried to steady myself for the sermon. That was when I felt Alan's body next to mine. Oh my goodness. It's just, she's being violated already. Like she hasn't even gotten married to this man and she's already being tormented in so many ways. I hate this. He was just a few inches away from me and he didn't say a word. He didn't have to. I knew it was him. What in the hell are you doing? I snapped at him. Alan stumbled awkwardly over the words. Uncle Fred told me to come sit by you. My sadness turned to anger. The way I would have sat up and walked out of there. Because they're going to do what they want to do with her anyway. I would have walked out. I'm going to go down with a fight. You guys are going to hate me. That's fine. You're going to make me marry this man. You're going to do all this other stuff so you can try to bed me and keep me stuck here. But I'm going to fight. I feel like in me, because of how I am, and I used to get in trouble when I used to get in trouble when I was little. I wasn't a bad kid, but my expressions alone used to get me in so much trouble. Anyways, okay, so my sadness turned to anger and I sat seething. I couldn't believe Uncle Fred would do this to me in front of the entire community. My private struggle was now on display for all to see. Uncle Fred was taking advantage of me by having Alan sit there. Up until this point, few knew that I had been placed with Alan Steed for marriage, but sitting us together in church served as a silent public announcement. Just having him this close to me felt like an attack. Exactly. Stepping out of the meeting house that Sunday, I was besieged by the gentle teasing of well-wishers calling me Mrs. Steed. Now that the whole congregation knew that Uncle Rulon had had a revelation of marriage for me, any further attempts to get out of it would be publicly viewed as defying the word of the prophet, which is yet another way to make her go through this, because it's going to look bad on her family. I could barely contain my fury at Uncle Fred's carefully crafted act. He'd effectively erased the privacy of my situation and foiled any remaining hope I had for release from the marriage. I stared past the happy crowd assembled around me at the majestic red mountains and thought about jumping off one of the sheer faces of the rock. Wow. It wouldn't be hard to climb up there, and I was sure it was high enough that the jump would kill me. This is horrible. She is so devastated that she is contemplating unaliving herself so that she doesn't have to go through with this, because in her mind, she can't just run. She can't just go. She can't just leave. As hard as it was for me to accept at 14, I was actually contemplating suicide. It was in that moment that I should have realized that the priesthood made it impossible for a woman to make decisions about her life, even if she knew what was right for her. Marriage wasn't about God or the prophet or any of that. It was about controlling women, trapping them into believing that they didn't have any other options, and the only way out was to leap into the arms of the Lord from hundreds of feet in the air. Yet I still believed. Ooh. I hadn't spoken to my dad since I'd been removed from his home nearly 2 years before. But after church that day, my every moment was consumed by a vision of being rescued by Dad, Brad, and Caleb. They would come by in the middle of the night, and we would all escape under the cover of darkness. I feel so bad for this girl. I do. The only clues we leave behind would be our footsteps, and in the house, our tire tracks in the gravel. In the morning, people would wake up and gasp. I'd be condemned as a sinner and cursed by Warren and Fred. My mother and sisters would be devastated that I left them, but at least I would be alive. It made all the more sense to leave them alive than to die where I was. All I needed was for someone to save me, someone to give me a place to go. But all this was just a fantasy. I had no way to contact Dad, Brad, and Caleb, and they didn't know about my impending marriage. Just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, after arriving back home that afternoon, Fred directed me to go on a walk with Alan. There were people lingering nearby, and it was impossible for me to decline without appearing defiant to my priesthood father. Mom shot me a look. Earlier, she had instructed me to be kind to Alan no matter what I was feeling inside. And with that passing glance, she told me to remember those words. I won't even expect it. I'm crying a little bit because I just can't help but think about the fact that she was so devastated that she was willing to unalive herself. And there's still young girls who are in this. This is something that they continue to do even to this day. And it just breaks my heart because they're living a life of misery and they don't even know that it could be better than what they're experiencing. The walk would be considered our first date. While Lily and Nancy had the luxury of a private afternoon drive with their spouses to be, I was being sent off walking into the mountains with every eye in the family watching. It's basically like, you want to be miserable? We're going to enjoy your misery. We're going to watch you as you are forced into this situation. We're going to put you on display so all can see, and so that it further makes you feel like you have to do this. I hate this for her. I do. I do. Alan moved awkwardly beside me in his black suit. To some other girl in some other situation, Alan's sandy blonde hair and blue eyes might have been attracted. He had a strong jaw and nice teeth, and there was nothing ugly or unkempt about him. Still, his face and his graceless demeanor made my skin crawl. Hesitantly, we headed toward the mountains, where we were to go on a short hike. Alan was kind to me, but I couldn't return his attitude. I knew that I was being horrible, but I just couldn't convince myself to do anything differently. He kept trying to hold my hand, but I would brush his hand away every time. I let out an exacerbated sigh and declared, "I don't want you to touch me." At this point, a few tears pushed at the corners of his eyes. "Why do you hate me so bad?" he asked, his strong masculine face looking momentarily boyish and lost. "I'm sorry, but I just don't like you, and I could not imagine an eternity with you." He looked stunned by my response. Somehow, not deterred, he gently nodded and said what any good priesthood man would: "God will change your feelings as long as you stay faithful. In time, you will feel differently." Alan is saying what he's supposed to say, because the moment that they say for our time and all eternity in their world, she's his. She's his. And because she's his, then he could do whatever he wants to her. That's exactly what this is about. I knew that would never happen, but I said nothing. We remained mostly quiet for the rest of our date, with me thinking over and over that I just couldn't wait for this hour to be over. A part of me wanted to give him a better explanation of how I felt, but my feelings couldn't be expressed in words. It was just an innate sense that God puts in each of us to see the difference between right and wrong. The inner voice was telling me that he was wrong for me on so many levels. Even before the marriage began, I was repulsed by him. He hadn't even held my hand, but he had already taken my innocence. And that's where I'm stopping it, y'all. If I'm crying already in this chapter, I don't know what I'm going to do in the next. Oh my goodness, it just breaks my heart in so many ways for her, because this is not what she wants. She's told so many people this is not what she wants, and yet they keep forcing her and making her feel guilty and making her feel like she's wrong because her body is screaming no, but everybody's telling her she has to do this. Anyways, that's all for today's reading. Let me know your thoughts on this. What do we think? I was completely wrong about the mom. But just because she wrote that note doesn't mean she delivered it either. All right. Anyways, thanks you guys. Like the video as it helps the channel. I love y'all, and I mean it. Until next time. Peace.